Thanks. I'll be mercifully brief because I won't leave time for discussion. And in fact, it's really not necessary to extend these comments very much. The basic points are quite straightforward and simple, not controversial. The particular focus, well, there could be others, but the particular focus here is on the two corporations paying attention to their actions in the Israeli-occupied territories. As I said, there are other things one could discuss. For example, Caterpillar has the honor of being the first manufacturing corporation to use scabs, permanent replacement workers, to undermine a strike, to destroy a strike. That's the time they did it. It was illegal in all countries except South Africa and the United States. And one could talk about other things. But we're discussing now what they're doing in the occupied territories. There is no question that both corporations are intensively involved in destruction, displacement, in the case of Caterpillar, even killing a young American a protester in the occupied territories, destroying villages, olive orchards, driving people out, putting up settlements, repression. In the case of Motorola, heavily involved in the repressive apparatus and security and so on. And there's also no question that all of this is illegal. I mean, that's by the highest authorities that exist in the world. That's been repeatedly established. UN Security Council years ago, 30 years ago, unanimously, with the United States joining in for once, which is rare, called on, condemned, deplored Israel's activities in the occupied territories, described them as a flagrant violation of the Geneva Conventions, the core of contemporary post-World War II international law, which forbids transfer of populations into territories under military occupation, also for their actions destroying substantial areas in the occupied territories, cantonizing the remnants of the population, since then with a separation wall that snakes through the territories and much else. And the Security Council called on all states to refrain from any support whatsoever to anything that Israel's doing in the occupied territories. The United States is by far the most flagrant violator of this, far and away. This has been reiterated by the International Court of Justice unanimously, including the American justice in a separate declaration reiterated that anything Israel's doing in the occupied territories involving settlers or repression, dispossession is in flagrant violation of the Geneva Conventions, is a de facto violation of international law, implies that any participation in it is criminal. And the General Assembly of the United Nations, in fact, every relevant authority has said approximately the same thing. So it seems that if, in a complicated world, this is one of the few things that's essentially beyond discussion. Human Rights Watch recently called upon the United States to refrain from any aid to Israel that is in any way involved in Israel's activity in the occupied territories. In fact, Human Rights Watch even went beyond and called for a cessation of any aid which is involved in imposing discriminatory structures which are very extreme inside Israel. But we're putting that aside here. Amnesty International, as you just heard, has said approximately the same thing. So it's kind of universal that There's one exception, the U.S. government, which in fact has been blocking a political settlement for about 35 years, a separate story. But the question is what American citizens should do with regard to blatantly criminal activities, flagrant violations of the most fundamental principles of international law, both on the part of the Israeli authorities, the U.S. government which is supporting them, and in this case, two corporations which are intimately involved in the most destructive and repressive activities. And I personally don't see much of why there should be any debate about that, but that's the issue right now. The question is, should actions be taken of the kind that Gabe described to overcome these criminal activities in which the university, as you know, is participating.